our next speaker is Cheryl Riggs, who is now heading up the utility, technology, telecommunications operations, and we are so happy to have her here today. We have lots of questions about the role of telecommunications with respect to utilities and how they intersect and how she's managing to make all of these big changes.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for your kind introduction. I'm Cheryl Riggs, President and CEO of Utility Technology Council, and it is definitely my distinct honor to be with you today at this notable event. But before I start, I have to start off by thanking Acting USEA Executive Director Sheila Hollis for this invitation to join you. She may not, can you hear me? Sheila? Is my sound on? Can you hear me, Sheila?
We can hear you, Cheryl.
Okay. She may not know it, but Sheila has become a mentor for me as I near the end of my first year as president and CEO of UTC. She's taken time out of her busy schedule to spend with me to talk over the phone. And I want to thank her publicly for her support of me over the last few months. And I want to thank her for her support and USEA to UTC over the years. Thank you so very much, sincerely, Sheila. I also want to acknowledge my fellow speakers today, especially our government partners, Deputy Energy Secretary David Turk and FERC Commissioner Allison Clements. On behalf of UTC, I look forward to working with both of you on some of the issues that I will be discussing in a bit. And I will be remiss if I did not give special recognition to two individuals here who are true groundbreakers, Commissioner Emeritus Holden and Bailey. But indeed, all of the panelists and attendees, virtually, you're giants in your own way, and I'm doing your own thing and moving the meter for the industry. And I'm honored to just be here with each one of you virtually today. So before we get into some of my remarks, I want to give you a little background about Utilities Technology Council. As I stated, I'm about to embark on my first year as president and CEO of UTC, but I have been with UTC for 4 years, coming up on 4 years actually in June. And every year I learn more and more about the amazing work that is being done in the industry. UTC represents electric, gas, and water utilities as they develop and maintain private communications networks that underpin the infrastructure used to power our lives. And these communication systems are the invisible infrastructure utilities rely upon to ensure that the power, the gas, and the water is on and available nearly all the times, as everybody's been mentioning. And it's invisible, most of us don't even know it exists. So, but most importantly, to me, as I've gone through these years, we represent all types of utilities. You investor-owned, public power, and cooperative. And although there are different types of utilities, most of them face the same challenges with their communication systems and acquiring spectrum, building and managing their private networks, and navigating through federal regulatory policies. And we work closely, UTC works closely with fellow utility associations. And I'm so proud to say that UTC is the only organization that represents all utilities and all kinds of utilities. And let me put it simply, if you work for a utility, whether it be electric, water, or natural gas, there is a place for you at UTC. And let me say it even more simple. Even if you don't work for a utility, but you work on behalf of the utility movement and the good work that is being done, there's still a place for you at UTC. So today, I'm going to try to talk a little bit about connecting the dots. And I often say that since I don't have a utility background, I connect the dots to understand the big picture and the details. So I'm going to try to take you on my connect the dots journey. When I last appeared before USEA in January, we discussed how utilities empower broadband deployment across the country. Well, indeed, right now as we speak, there are hundreds of electric utilities of all types, IOU, cooperative, and publicly owned, all providing some sort of broadband service to their communities. And it's my hope, and I'm sure it's your hope as well, that in just a few years, hundreds more utilities of all kinds will be doing the same. Because let's be honest here, broadband is now as important to our national economy and lifestyle as electricity was 100 years ago. And I don't need to tell anyone watching this event of the importance of broadband. Without it, I could not even be speaking to you today from my home. But I'm sure there might be quite a few people listening who might be wondering why someone is talking about broadband at an energy utility event. But the fact is, broadband isn't just about internet service. It's about clean energy, grid modernization, and broad economic development. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to try to connect the dots between broadband as a service that we are all using right now and broadband as a national energy and economic priority. So in order to get there, let's first just go back to why UTC exists in the first place. To offer a venue for all utilities. We have to have some way to come together for not just the utilities, but our vendor technology partners who we value and appreciate dearly, to collaborate and discuss best practices, to share information and work together to build reliable and resilient communications networks that I just mentioned, and I'm going to keep mentioning, because those networks underpin the critical infrastructure. And indeed, utility communications networks, they're diverse, it's not cookie cutter, depending on the need and location, and they're reliable, resilient, and absolutely essential to keeping the lights on. When UTC executives like myself begin talking about the importance of utility communications networks, the question that we are often asked is why utilities don't just work with the major telecommunication companies like blank and blank, instead of building their own. But I want to clarify that in certain situations, utility partners, they do partner with telecommunication companies when it makes sense. But there are certain reasons where utilities consider to build out their own networks. And one reason is because so much of their critical infrastructure is located in remote locations that's outside of areas traditionally served by those large companies. But another reason that utility networks decide that they need to go outside and do their own is they need to be more robust and reliable than you and I need in our daily lives. We all have experienced how on phone calls, they cut in and out mid-sentence, or even on these virtual events, they don't always go as planned. In the beginning, I was saying, can you hear me? They go a little haywire. But utility systems must operate in all conditions at nearly all times. And many of you know, but some of you, like myself, may have asked or wondered how utilities can restore services after storms when the power's out. How crews are in touch with each other even though there's no electricity. It's because their communication systems are still working. We plan for all kinds of hazards so our networks can run when the power is out for days. That's why utilities build their own networks, because they need to. What about broadband and clean energy, you say? Well, in addition, these communications are also critical to the deployment of new distributed energy resources, balancing supply and demand, while also bringing up and ramping down certain resources. This requires a fast and resilient communications network. As utilities are investing in grid modernization, many are turning to high-speed broadband communication systems that help deploy these new energy resources. These systems are also allowing two-way communications between utilities and their customers. And as you've heard over and over, that's what it's all about at the end of the day: the consumer, the customer, the communities, helping restore service after power outages and giving customers more control over their energy usage. None of these ideas are new to this crowd. We use the terms grid modernization and smart grid all the time, but we don't always think about the network that makes it all happen. And that's where broadband comes into play. Broadband communication systems are faster, more reliable, and can transfer higher amounts of data than networks of old. And this means utilities can transfer more data at much faster rates, thereby providing greater situational awareness about their system and empowering deeper penetration of cleaner sources of energy. And it also means that broadband is actually being deployed in unserved and underserved areas all over the country. As Justin just mentioned with TVA, this is a serious issue that obviously all of us can relate to. But it's not by those you traditionally expect. Instead, it is the electric utility that will be the key to solving our nation's digital divide. And let me be clear, this is already happening, and I'm very thankful. It is happening in Virginia, Mississippi, Alabama, and it will likely be happening in West Virginia and many other states. And please forgive me if it's already happening and I didn't mention or give credit. In fact, one of our previous speakers, Charles Patton, is the Executive Vice President of a utility company that is on the cutting edge of utility broadband, American Electric Power. AEP subsidiary Appalachian Power is in the midst of developing the so-called middle mile broadband projects in West Virginia and Virginia that will bring high-speed internet to areas currently without any form of high-speed internet. A 2018 Virginia law directed AEP and Dominion Energy to determine whether it could participate in efforts to bridge the digital divide through its transmission modernization efforts. And a second law in 2019 permitted the utilities to seek authorization from the State Corporation Commission to build out their broadband networks to assist local internet providers in bringing high-speed internet to their communities. AEP has a pilot program in the southwestern corner of the state, a community desperate for the economic boost that only broadband can provide. Sometimes I use the term connecting the dots when I describe UTC to my friends and family. And this project for Mr. Patton's utility is exactly what I'm talking about. AEP and Dominion are connecting the dots between broadband and the energy industry of the future. Too often outside industry observers paint the utility industry as stodgy and old-fashioned or resistant to change. When I see how often people take electricity and water for granted, it can make me slightly frustrated, to say the least, because as we're seeing in Virginia, West Virginia, Alabama, and elsewhere, it is the electric industry that is driving our economy forward. And in some cases, literally saving local economies from certain doom. And as we see so often after natural disasters, utilities are among the first in and the last out when it comes to restoring service, even risking their own lives. Here, utilities are serving areas the big telecommunications industry has ignored, or simply stated is too expensive. And they're using the same technologies that will bring cleaner, more resilient forms of energy as well. So I'd like to challenge our community and our audience to speak up, speak louder, talk about how we can truly be the solution, or at least part of the solution to so many of our needs. And I'm even preaching to myself because, as I stated, I'm not from a utility background, and sometimes it's not a comfortable place for me to be, but this is a very important issue. And I'm challenging myself to speak up, but I'm also asking you to do the same, because I'm telling you the communications industry is taking notice of our work. And some of you have been working at it way longer than I have. And we know they have some big pockets and are already ramping up efforts to push back against the proposals that would help utilities connect their communities to the internet. And we need to make sure that our communities are connected now more than ever. UTC is on the front lines of these battles at the Federal Communications Commission and elsewhere. And we need an industry-wide approach to communicate these incredible stories that I hear across the country when I speak to our members. But this is another reason why I'm so grateful, USEA. Thank you again for this opportunity to bring this message to your important audience. Right now, the White House and members of Congress are debating infrastructure proposals that would encourage utility broadband programs nationwide. And while there are probably elements of these proposals that we may not all agree upon, one thing that we know is that we need affordable and reliable broadband. We need to work together across utility industry sectors to spread the word as to how we can empower broadband deployment and how broadband is not only critical to our economy, but our clean energy goals as well. So let's continue to connect the dots together through open dialogue like this conference, skilled active listening of all perspectives, compassion for humanity, because is this not the core of why we're here? For our communities, that's what energy utilities to serve the people and execute with measurable results. Once again, thank you USEA and Sheryl for the invitation to be here. It is such an honor for me to be amongst these industry giants. Thank you for listening. And if you care to join us in these efforts, please reach out to me. Find me on Twitter or LinkedIn or through our website at www.utc.org. If you can't get me, please reach out to anyone on the extraordinary UTC staff. We are moving the meter for our members in the industry together. Thank you. Thank you so very much.
Well, thank you, Cheryl, for that extremely thoughtful and comprehensive and also explanation in a really good way about the intensifying relationship between utilities and communication infrastructure. Do you, just as a matter of, I'm sure this issue is on your mind, the sourcing of the equipment, are you, because there's been obviously a lot of discussions, multiple articles and all that, where do we get the equipment to include on our system that we feel comfortable about, the security of it, and the whole package of issues that has arisen in recent dialogues on the topic?
Well, that's a good question, Sheila. And I think just like anything else, the workforce issue, the supply issue, I mean, I can't give you a full answer on that because I think everything is evolving and everything is happening constantly. You know, it's changing, it's evolving. When we talk about supply chain, we're involved, you know, in the government. You know, the government cooperation is critical. And with our staff and our members, we're trying to make sure that we stay ahead of the curve. But the only thing I can say is the pandemic has definitely presented its challenges, but, you know, UTC working with our members, that's why it's critical for everyone to be at the conversation, for the table and different members. The cooperation part is critical, but the supply chain is a discussion that we have to continue to be a part of and continue to share the information of what we learn with our members. And that's where we are right now. But it's definitely at the top of the list, along with workforce development, the infrastructure, a ton of them, ton of issues that we still have to stay on top of. But that's one of them.
Thank you so much. That's extremely insightful, and that's an issue we want to continue to engage with you on. And we're going to be looking to you for more information. And as this whole situation evolves further and the obvious relationship between telecommunications and utilities only grows more intense, we'll be looking to you for leadership and your wisdom. Thank you so much for being with us today. It's been very helpful.
Thank you, Sheila, and thank you again, USEA, and thank you to everyone. Thank you for your leadership. Again, thank you for your mentorship and your leadership. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.